Okay, call to order, Melissa.
Mayor Mark Sukup.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick Collins. Here. Councilmember Aaron Pearson. Here. Councilmember Lisa Lake.
Here.
Councilmember Brett Hansen.
Here.
Any amendments to the agenda? On 9A?
Executive session? Yes, sir.
So I'm going to just summarize where we are, and Robert, based on what we were talking about. So everybody received a letter from Robert. It doesn't appear to request an action plan. And so Robert, in fact, why don't I just give it to you, Robert?
Sure. I would like to, at some point, schedule an executive session with the council to seek some guidance and just have some conversation about this topic, but I don't think that we need to do it tonight, and I think it would be a little bit more informed conversation at a future meeting.
Is council good with that? Everybody? Okay. So I think we're going to not have an exec session
So
today.
we'll remove 9A.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other amendments? Okay. Do we have public comment, Melissa? Anybody? Are you going to do public comment? Okay, I don't think there can be anybody. So, all right. Consent agenda payables. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. We've got the town minutes and then the resolution for adopting the working reserve policy. And as you remember, that was presented to us last meeting and stuff. Does anybody have any questions or comments they want to discuss? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda other?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved? It's approved. None opposed. Let's go there. All right. Chief Timnath, you'd like to talk to us?
We've been working on impact fees for actually over 2 years now for the district. This was approved by the Colorado State Legislature. Can't give you the exact legislative number right now for fire districts to do impact fees for the development of be a little clearer, for the development of new infrastructure for capital improvements for fire districts. And our district has encouraged, the district board is moving forward with this. And Ann can talk a little bit more about the intricacies of that legislation. But what we anticipate for the capital needs, specifically for the town of Timnath, one of the things that we've got 2 growth areas that we're very concerned about growing, about the need for fire stations. One would be, of course, you've read the newspaper, followed Fort Collins, one being Montaba. With 4,000 homes going in that area, and the other being probably somewhere in the area of Mulberry and County Road 5 as we watch Timnath grow north. One of the things that I've told people is you can build a fire, Aurora proved this many years ago. They built a fire station in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you remember that, Station 12, and thought that growth was going to happen, and they had a fire station in the middle of nowhere for a lot of years. You build a school out there, people are going to start building homes. So we anticipate that growth to go. We have triggers that we watch. We watch the number of building permits. We see how much building is going on. We see what that revenue would be for O&M money. Also, we watch the number of calls in that specific area. We know that that's outside our response time goal parameters right now. So we know for the Timnath area that in 5, 10, maybe 15 years, there's going to be a station needed there. And one of the ways we pay for the growth inside the city of Fort Collins is through capital expansion fees. We've had them forever. We have a specific, she might be, that used to be Ann's job at the city was capital expansion fees. But with that is specific for the growth of needs on the fire service for capital expansion. And that has helped us immensely to be able to build the infrastructure we need to be able to build a fire station. The O&M will come from the rooftops and the property taxes that come with that in the district. But to get that capital, and there's basically two things that the legislation specific to fire districts allows. It's for the construction of new infrastructure such as a fire station and for the purchase of fire apparatus. A fire engine, the fire engine that's setting over across the street, one of those new now goes for about $700,000. The heavy rescue that's probably will be deployed in 2 or 3 years, but it's a reserve now. It's sitting over in the far bay over there. If you see it drive down the street, it's going to get dark because it's really big. That was about $875,000. A ladder truck's well over $1 million. So to be able to pay for that capital is what we worked for to get expansion fees passed by the legislature to be able to add that impact fee on the development so that we can get that infrastructure built. And Ann has a presentation that goes into more detail. I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Tom. That's a really good summary of what we're here to talk about. I'll try not to be redundant with what Tom's already shared with you, but I do have a few slides to show. Our goal in coming to you now is to lay the groundwork for bringing back an action for you in the near future to implement capital expansion fees within the town of Timnath for fire services. Tom really has described the purpose of those fees, and it's really to make sure that new development contributes to paying for the costs of those improvements, those capital improvements, both in facilities and the major equipment. This is in contrast to what we did in Station 8, whichever way is next door here, that we saved up money through your TIF for a number of years to be able to put towards that construction, because the district, the Poudre Valley Fire Protection District, was not able to collect a capital expansion fee until 2017. Legislation had to pass to allow that to happen. So we weren't able to use this funding vehicle in the past, but now we will be able to in the future. And who'd have thought we'd already be here to talking about the next Timnath Fire Station, which will probably be our station, what, 17, 18? It might be 15. Yeah. So we want to plan ahead and start accumulating money, a few $100s per rooftop, and put those away, put those in combination with other funds that we have in our capital reserves, and money from the PFA as a whole, which means from the city partnership, because as what we've learned from Station 8 here, a station in Timnath doesn't just serve Timnath. With the Poudre Fire Authority model, Station 8 runs calls back into the city. Stations in the city run calls into Timnath. So it's one big entity. So the big picture goal is to build up those revenues and be ready when the time comes, when there's enough rooftops and enough calls to warrant another station. As I said, the city has been collecting these fees since 1997 for fire service. And in 2017, the Colorado legislature enabled the fire special districts to implement these fees. The way that this works for most fees is you have to have a rational nexus for the fee. So you can't just say, we think everybody owes $500 a unit to build the next fire station. You have to be able to say, how did you calculate that? And so it demonstrates that there's a reasonable amount, that the fee is a reasonable amount for the impact of each additional dwelling unit or each additional square foot of commercial or industrial space. So we did a study in 2007, or we joined the city in doing their study in 2017 because they were updating their fees at that time. And our logic is that the cost of a fire station in the city versus in Timnath is the same. It serves the same customer base. And so we tied the proposal for fees in the district to the city's fees, just in proportion to the amount of PFA that is represented by the district. So the fee calculation is one that will make your brain hurt, but this is why we hire consultants. They take into account existing land uses within the PFA's jurisdiction, how much is residential, commercial, industrial. They do a functional population calculation, which is meant to get at how many people are in buildings during the course of a day, because it recognizes that a big factory operation like say Budweiser doesn't have very many people there during the course of the day. And since so many of our calls are health related, health emergency related, we take into account how many people are actually there, as opposed to in a residential property, which is 2.3 people on average. And then it looks at our inventory of capital facilities and equipment, divides that by the percentage that is in the district, and then comes up with a, turn the crank, get a number out at the end. So we have a replacement cost of $68 million of facilities and equipment. 16% of that is attributed to the district. So 11 million of our assets are attributable to the district. Divide that by the functional population. There will not be a quiz. And that's how you get your functional population per person in each of the uses. So this is a table out of our study, which gives you a whole lot more detail than what you need. But the bottom line is we're proposing that we collect about just under $600 per single family detached dwelling unit, about $400 for multifamily. And then the commercial and industrial rates are per 1,000 square feet. The idea of this is it's going forward. We would agree on at what stage works for the town of Timnath to collect a fee, whether that's at building permit time, at development review, at CO, whatever makes sense with your processes. And typically the developers just pass this along to the person who's purchasing the property. It just passes through your development review process. So we've got, we had started this process back last year, and then you all had a change in leadership, and then we had, COVID. And but here we are back. We have gone over this proposal with our board, the Poudre Valley Fire Protection District Board, and provided some questions and feedback back to the consultant. Now we're at the stage of needing to enter into some intergovernmental agreements with Larimer County, Weld County, and the town of Timnath to implement this. Part of the state law that was passed in 2017 was a provision that we were to meet with developers and builders prior to implementation. It doesn't say that they get a veto. It doesn't say really what the content of that meeting is, but that they be informed and engaged in the process. And so that's a step we need to still take in Timnath as well as in Larimer County. And then probably are looking at maybe up to as much as 6 months of implementation time to be up and running with this. But I think that's my last slide. Yes. So that's the nuts and bolts of the proposal. I think what we're looking for is some understanding of any questions you might have of us. We'll move forward with a meeting with builders and developers and check off that step. Anything else that you would expect, Wes, for us to want to? Okay.
I'd like to add one thing. We did do a meeting with, we reached out a former district board member, Landon Hoover from Hartford Homes, who has quite a presence here in Timnath. basically was our host and sent the invites out through the Larimer County Home Builders Association and also contacted developers. And we had Landon and someone from Journey Homes, and that was had a couple of board members there, but that's been a couple of years ago. Was that? It was a year ago. Oh, it's a year ago. Well, COVID has changed my perception of time, but that was what we had then. And Landon was there to answer any questions, and I think we ate cookies because we didn't have a lot of folks show up.
So did Landon and the Journey Homes representative agree with the calculations and stuff you had here?
Landon did. The gentleman from Journey Homes was one of their land speculators. So he was just there for information to see what it was. But when we worked this, we did the heavy lift of this work while Landon was still on the board, and he concurred. This is just a little bit less than what it is in Fort Collins. It's within a couple of dollars of what it is in Fort Collins. So that real estate market is similar, and that's what Landon was looking at to see what that similarity would be.
The other thing that the representative from Journey Homes said was, yeah, this is kind of normal. Not really an unexpected process or an unexpected fee, but they were not surprised. And that may be why we didn't have very many people show up, is it's just kind of normal and expected.
Well, Aaron, do you have a question?
Sorry, we're kind of
See if the council has a couple of questions here.
The cage matches. If I could just dub team on that real quick. With some of the local builders, Loveland Fire Rescue Authority has implemented these, probably had them enforced for well over a year now, and some of the other local fire districts have already done this. So I think that's probably given some of that exposure to some of the builders and developers in the area.
I just had one quick question for you. Looking back at that chart of fees, there was a residential, single family, on top, and then the by square footage. So is that two fees? Is it like a base fee and then a fee by square footage?
Actually, that's
Or is that
fee.
the average?
Actually, the fees that the study gave us were two options, either the first two lines or the next 4 or 5 lines.
Got it.
And I think the feedback that we got from your staff was that they would prefer the first two, and that was easier to implement.
Sure.
Larimer County has also told us the same thing, is they would prefer to have that simpler fee, which is a little bit higher for the smaller units. But, you know, on a $100,000 house, pretty minimal.
Yeah. And they're not building many houses under 700 square feet.
So, and if you don't have impact fees, like we haven't had for a while, where's the money's coming from?
Well, what we have done prior to this for building stations is when we have year-end money, we squirrel it away. We scrimp and save, and we've seen that.
Where do you get that money though?
From our revenue streams right now are from either the city or the district. In the district, that's property
Through
tax.
property tax? Okay.
From the city, it's a combination of sales tax and property tax.
I have so this is a little bit separate from this, but what would you estimate right now is the response time? You had mentioned that the area by Mulberry is kind of outside of what the ideal response time is. Where do you think that line is right now of where it fits into your ideal?
I have to get back to you on exactly what that is. We do have a planning and analysis division that can, we have a GIS analyst that can generate that time and show you what those times will be. So if we could take a note of that to get that to Laura to do that. We are in the process. We just completed our reaccreditation process. We are accredited. We're one of only 280 fire departments out of 30,000 that are accredited. And we just finished that process, and we're looking at our response time benchmarks. So we're looking at probably around a 7.5 minute total from hello to hello, from when someone calls 911 to when we show up on the porch as being realistic. But we know from our modeling that we can do with GIS that exceeds that time. So once we start seeing the call volumes, that demand going, there's when we'll trigger that. But we can certainly shoot an email to Wes, letting him know what those times are.
Great. And then one other question. typically, you had mentioned that a lot of times it's in with the permits or something like that. In some communities that implement this, what do they do with developments that are already planned? Is there any, does it just, I guess that would probably be a question maybe for our staff. I'm not sure as far as what that recommendation, I guess, would be.
We've seen language in the IGA that talks about projects that are already in the planning process or have been approved. And so there may be we need to talk about where those lines are drawn, is if is a project that's already issued 50 building permits, is the 51 building permit, is it a date certain or is it development certain? So we haven't gotten to that level just yet.
Okay.
But those are part of the conversations that we're having.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we want to make sure we have that clear is so that they know when they're writing their contracts what to expect. But also because some projects can develop over many years, and we don't want to say, well, this project, since it started, doesn't ever have to pay fees. So typically we would pick a date in the future.
And Brett?
Yeah. Okay. So to make sure I understand the revenue streams before and after this change, you were collecting revenue from property taxes, and that was funding your O&M, and then you were kind of scrimping and saving to pay for any large capital expenses. These fees are now meant to cover your capital expenses, and you'll continue to cover O&M with property taxes, correct?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that we have had these capital expansion fees within the city since 1997. So we have funded stations that are within the city with those funds in the past.
City or town?
In the city. I don't believe we used any of the capital expansion fees for Station 8, though we could have, because clearly that station benefits from, or the city benefits from that station being there.
City or town?
City.
So you're talking about Fort Collins, not the
Right,
town of
right,
Timnath. Okay.
Right. Yeah, we didn't use any of the city of Fort Collins's capital expansion fees, but we use those have used those for other stations or portions of stations and other buildings.
Then on the O&M side, when we get into, it's not just property tax because it's part of that mix. This is the magic of the authority, and I get pretty passionate about that. But the way the authority works is what we believe is the best system of finance and governance for our model here, in the way the district is a donut around the city of Fort Collins, and it provides response efficiencies, but also governance efficiencies. We have one fire chief instead of two, one HR director instead of two. And we're able, because those stations, this station here, when you ask about response times, Station 8 has a little bit of trouble getting across the interstate, as do we all who live out here. This response times in Station 8's area has improved dramatically since we went from a volunteer station to a paid station. And the city of Fort Collins, the money we collect out of the TIF and Timnath is not sufficient to pay for the continual operation, the O&M of that station over there. So the share that comes through that 80-20 split financial share between the city and the district is that magic that makes this work. So that magic will happen at station either be Station 18 or 19. That's what it would be on Mulberry. In Montava, there's that split of the financial responsibilities for the O&M. And also the other thing it allows us to do, and expansion fees are going to allow us even more capability of doing that, is putting the station exactly where it needs to be, regardless of what those geographical or those political geographical boundaries are.
Do you anticipate any change to the property tax rates related to the fire authority, or
What's that? Pardon me?
do you anticipate any change to the property tax rates, to those property tax revenues?
Right now, I think we are at it's about 10.8 after we de-gallegarized in the last election in the district. Thank you for those who voted for that. So that keeps us at that 7.2 RAR in the district. And so we don't anticipate, we have not had any discussion about increases from that, about 10.8 mils that's in the district.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, other than the ability to use Gallagher adjustments is needed to keep from suffering revenue losses, is your mill levy otherwise capped? Would you need an election to
we would need
raise
it by Tabor. We'd have to have an election to raise that. But basically, we call it de-gallegarized, but as you know, we can't de-gallegarize, so it's actually a Tabor election.
Right.
That Collins, Cochran, and Cole developed the ballot language for us that allows the mill levy to keep at an equivalency of a 7.2 RAR.
Right, right. But other than the ability to Gallagherize to maintain a revenue neutral position, you don't have the authority to
Right. No,
increase
if we
your mill
wanted,
levy.
if the district wanted to raise any kind of, the last time they did was when the city, a little over 10 years ago, when the city passed KFCG. If you're familiar with that, in Fort Collins, the district went from, I can't remember, I think they were at a 9 in the lower 9s to a 10.595 in that same election year. So, and that's the last time. So any increases to increase revenue other than the natural progression of the increase in the values of homes and more homes would have to go to the voters under Tabor.
So Robert, I don't know if I was tracking with your questions, but were you asking if we did the impact fees, if we had to have a vote?
No, Councilor Hanson was asking a question about the impact that we were going to see on mill levies, or whether there was going to be an increase in mill levies. And the response from the chief was keyed to the ability to take advantage of Gallagher adjustments to maintain a tax revenue neutral position going forward. And I just wanted the council to be clear. It was my understanding that there was no ability to increase the operations mill levy other than is needed for a Gallagher adjustment. And I just wanted to make sure that question was responded to for the council. But there's no need to go through a Tabor election for any kind of on the fee side at all.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thanks.
Sure.
Rick.
Yeah, impact fees collected in Timnath then can be used in the Timnath territory only, or can be used throughout your whole?
Well, theoretically, they could be used throughout the district. The amount that we collect in Timnath probably would never be enough to build a full station. You're probably going to get some PFA money that originates at the city building that next station. But it depends on how many dwelling units and how much commercial and industrial. So it's not restricted to be used. Well, it's not restricted in the proposal to just be used in town of Timnath. It's dedicated.
Impact fees collected in Timnath can also be used for Engine 8 to replace a truck then? Is that what you're saying too?
Actually, fees are only allowed to be used for expansion. So when the time comes for Station 8's engine to be replaced, we'll have to replace that out of operating dollars. This is only for expansion. So a new station with a new truck. Or if we were to add a second engine to work out of that station was built with oversized capacity so that we could run two companies out of there. And that probably would qualify as an expansion. And then we could probably buy an engine out of that, but not for replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, Ann and Chief DeMint.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, council reports. Lisa, do you have anything? Rick, okay, I do have one. The Finance Committee met last Tuesday. Just for the council's FYI, they looked at the budget and stuff. We're very pleased with it and gave Lisa several good comments and stuff of her good work. And so they did that. And then as instructed, they started the process for an RFP to have a municipal advisor to review the loans in the town and see if there's a way to save some money. So that process has started. And that's all for them. Other reports, 6C. Lisa, I think you did a great job sitting here. Is there anything extra you wanted to talk about? And, you know, I think the report speaks for itself, but you want something?
I just have the September sales tax numbers if you guys are interested in
Sure.
hearing that. So for September, for the month of September compared to the month of September 2019, sales tax is up 16.5%. And then the year-to-date September financials over year-to-date last year is up 15.6%. So it is a slight increase above what we were seeing in August. So
Great.
And I
And
don't have
that'll be
anything-
we won't change the budget, I'm sure, but that is greater than what you projected for the budget, correct?
Correct.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Engineering report, I see most of it, but Don, I think you have a report on what's going on with the street sweeper.
Yeah, the only thing, yeah, per our conversation earlier, we've developed basically a schedule for 2020, 2021. We told you originally that our goal was to, at minimum, sweep the town twice a year. We're gonna do that for sure. And, we can't pick exactly the days that it's gonna be. We'll pick, let's just say, within 2 or 3 weeks of when we plan on sweeping each area of the town, so that everybody has at least a lookout to when they can expect the sweeper to come by. We're sweeping roads like Harmony much more frequently than that, and some of the other are more heavily used roads. So that's the philosophy behind it. We'll have it ready to go around and for you folks to see probably next month.
Okay.
And we'll roll it out in the beginning of the year to the public.
So anticipate a report from you sometime in November.
Correct.
Thanks. Anything else?
I've got, I don't know, Wes and I were talking last week. We didn't get our snow report or snow policy, which hasn't changed, but the map has changed just a little bit. And I have copies of that. They have all the trial streets from last year on there. You wouldn't know unless it's in your area, but they got plowed this time. There's another trial street that we couldn't plow last year in Saratoga, which we did plow this last time. And so if you want copies of those, I've got those.
How many times did you go around this time?
Lots.
Did you? Because
Well,
my bias is Club Lane looked like it only got hit once.
I'm certain it got hit more than once, but it's not a priority one road.
Right.
And so the priority 1s and 2s got hit quite a bit, and we were very successful in keeping that in good shape, I believe. All the priority 3s got hit, and I suspect they got hit at least twice, but I'll have a report on that probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Club Lane's a 2. So
Okay.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I think 6D speaks for itself. 6E speaks for itself. 6F, police station site selection. Wes, you got a comment to make?
Yes, so you see Brian's report in the packet this evening. So any questions on that, please let me know. I think the next step was it was the committee's recommendation to reach out and do some neighborhood outreach. So those postcards are going to go out, I believe, into this week, first part of next week, with the intent of having some sort of neighborhood outreach for the communities that, for the 2 proposed sites that might be impacted. So that will go out shortly.
Great, thank you.
And then we'll come back on the 10th for a formal recommendation to council on a site.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Police staff report. I don't think you have anything more, do you, Terry? It looks great. Manager report. Did you have anything else, Wes? Okay. Resolution approving terms to amend the lease for the Timnath Reservoir, 7A. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, in his absence, asked me to take this one. So we, at the council's direction, we actually went and talked to the ditch company manager, and then he took it to his board for their consideration in terms of just a discussion item. They were in support of the proposed change, as you see in the packet, which is actually 2 additional 5-year extensions at the town's sole discretion. So that gives the town the runway to, if the town wanted to, after the 15-year end date that started in 2016, could decide whether to continue or not. And that the reservoir company couldn't pull the plug on the town, so to speak. So we got 2 of those. So we got an additional 10 years at the town's discretion on top of the 15 years that started in 2016. So with your approval tonight, we'll take this language to the ditch company as well and get their sign off on it. And that'll help give us a little more breathing room in terms of the development at the park.
Comments? Anyone? Do you want to make?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we know what the future is until 2041. That's going to be comforting, and we're having our next Park and Rec Committee meeting, Prost meeting on Thursday night. So it'll be good to bring that up because the topic of conversation is the reservoir.
For sure.
That's awesome. Lisa, Rick, anything? I would like a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Good job. Good job on getting that so quickly to us too. I think you were only asked last week to get that or 2 weeks ago. So good job.
That was a good turnaround from the ditch company as well.
Yeah, good job. Thank you. Metro District Committee report, both Brett and Robert, I think. So it's got Robert here. So I don't know who's taken over here.
Thanks, Mayor. My name's just on it because we assisted the committee and helped Brett with some of the paperwork, but he was the one providing the leadership and steering the committee. So I'll just yield the floor to him and then step in if there are technical questions.
Great. Take it away, Brett.
All right, so the report in the packet was unanimously approved by the Metro District Committee. It's a series of recommendations of amendments to the Timnath Model Service Plan for Metro Districts, as well as one suggestion that the council discuss the regional improvement mill levy, and we can get to that at the end. Just to kind of put some context around this, the purpose of this report was, it was directed to the council, but it was also directed to the general public as something that was going to help the public know what the town is looking at. So I'll just kind of give a quick outline of each of the recommendations. At the end of each bullet point, I recommended, underline, and tried to sum it up. But basically, the committee wanted to emphasize the protections of runaway debt that are in the service plan and want to recommend that any changes of the service plan should continue to keep those protections, specifically a debt service mill levy cap and a sunset provision on debt. And then there was a recommendation from the committee that we be a little bit more explicit in some of the language and defining debt, particularly including things like promissory notes and the different debt instruments that are sometimes used. It was believed that by legal counsel that we do include those things, but there was a desire to make that more explicit. So that was the first requirement, the first recommendation. The second recommendation was about disclosure and what's happening at home buying. Robert, I'll actually ask you to help me out a little bit with this one, just to make sure I'm precise on some of the language. If you could help me out with what's meant by recorded and what's what exactly did we, how I want to make sure we get a precise summary of that. If you could help me out with the disclosure requirements recommendation.
Sure. So it was important to the committee that the disclosure notice be recorded in the real property records. It's not currently a requirement in the town's model service plan, but the idea would be that it would be recorded so it would come up in title searches. And then there's also a desire on the part of the committee that the builder or the seller make best reasonable efforts to get those disclosures into potential buyers' hands. But I know you're not all wanting to sit here and listen to me talk about the things that the committee decided not to recommend, but just for everybody's edification, there was more discussion about whether there should be more stringent requirements that the disclosure be posted, say, inside the sales trailer. And the issue that the committee came up against is that the way that homes are being sold is evolving and changing so quickly that to make very precise draconian requirements in that context, in addition to the recording requirement, probably wouldn't make sense when everybody's looking back on those requirements 5-10 years from now. So that was the discussion on the method for trying to ensure that purchasers get copies of the disclosures. There was also a charge to the communications team to take a look at this and try to come up with some ingenuitive ways to, say, partner with the real estate community to make sure that agents are educated about this and they have the resources that they need to provide this information to their customers. But then moving along to the contents of the report or of the disclosures, the committee's recommendation was to include the information that's already included in the model, but additionally to include the estimated fees and property taxes for an average price point home it's anticipated within the district. So when the buyer receives the disclosure, they can really start to make sense of it and get a more accurate sense of what kind of financial short-term and long-term impact being in the district is going to have on them.
Thanks, Robert.
Sure.
And then moving on to O&M, both fees and mill levies. So the committee felt that with O&M fees, once residents have control of a board, there's less of an interest of the council being a check on how those fees are collected, how much of those fees are collected and how they're spent. So once a board is resident controlled, that caps on fees are removed and it's left to the devices of that neighborhood to decide how they want to do it. We also recommended adding an escalator to the initial cap just to remove the need for asking the council to raise fee caps for regular raising of expenses. And then when it comes to the mill levy cap, the same concept applied was once a board is resident controlled, it should be removed from the caps that we are currently using. It should be left to the residents, those local residents, to decide how much they want to collect and what they need. Item number 4 is the property tax mill levy cap. Currently, there's a provision where once the district gets built out to a certain extent, that cap, the total aggregate cap raises from 50 mills to 60 mills. The committee recommended removing that increase in the cap, that raising of the cap. And the reason being is some jurisdictions, they'll allow you to go to an unlimited mill levy cap after a certain point, and it allows you to get some favorable refinancing terms, and the end result being that you lower your tax rate. But this sort of halfway compromise just didn't seem to make sense. It didn't seem to provide the benefit. It seemed to just look like a tax increase to your average resident. And there wasn't a desire to remove the cap altogether from the feelings of the committee that it opened up a district to a lot of risk in the event of economic downturn. So those are the hard recommendations that the committee suggested that the council approve be written into the model service plan. And if the council agrees, then we can direct town staff to write those in. And then that last item was the regional improvement mill levy. And I summed up the main points of discussion that was in the committee in the report, both what the purpose of these fees were, what the purpose of this mill levy is, not fee, excuse me. And then the feeling of the committee about not feeling comfortable with this concept of the town collecting Metro District revenues. So I will echo the committee's sentiments that I'm not comfortable with it. I prefer that we remove the regional improvement mill levy. I think that if the town wants to collect property tax, it should be done not through the Metro District. It should be done a different way. But the recommendation of the committee was that we at least open this up to the council to discuss. So I'll start with that. I guess I'm running it, Rick.
Looks like they've done a lot of work, and they've raised one of the issues. I think of one of my pet peeves is why the town doesn't put a cap on the amount, the life of these MET districts. Because I know in some states and some communities they've done that. How tight are we? Let me put it this way: we really can't touch the 18 or whatever districts we have right now. They're locked in.
Correct.
But I would think that the council would want to look at putting something in that would say, from now on, if you start a Metro District, here's your time certain, instead of it running indefinitely.
So you're proposing a sunset on any new districts that are formed altogether?
If I was looking at a home tomorrow in Austin, Texas, my realtor might say this is really a gem because it's only got 11 years left on the Met district.
I mean, you do have the one, and Robert, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. Once a district has paid off its debt, its obligations, it does have the right to choose to dissolve if whoever's on the Metro District boards at that time don't see a reason to continue. Is that correct, Robert? So
Sure. Let me put it this way: that all metro districts that have been approved over the last since 2011, when our firm got involved with the town, have a mill levy imposition term of 40 years. So 40 years is the clock within which they are allowed to impose a debt service property tax mill levy on homes, and that they lose that authorization in the 40th year. The only exception to that is if there is a resident controlled board and they wish to refinance debt to get a more favorable interest rate and they think it's in the district's best interest, then they have a limited exception to that general rule. So there is a limit on the district's ability to impose debt service property taxes within its boundaries.
Let me just make sure I'm clear. If they decide to refinance that debt and go from 40 years to 50 or 52 years, can they also take on more debt during that time?
No.
Okay.
I have a question about the disclosure requirements. I'm just curious how, so it's not the Metro District that sells the homes.
Right.
You know, if I want to sell my home and you're requiring a Metro District to give certain information, how,
this would be done at closing.
Right,
as part of
but-
the closing documents that would be required.
so who does that?
It'd be the title company, right? Right there, Robert?
That's right. So the Metro District, they'll have a consultant. It'll either be the manager or the accountant or the attorney that will record the disclosure in the real property records, and then it'll become a title document.
Okay, so that's something that can be done through the closing and things like that.
Right.
Okay.
And that's an additional step that this committee is recommending that's not currently in the
Okay.
model service plan.
Perfect, thank you.
And I think a lot of them do that right now at closing, but the problem is if you're a young family and you get hooked on a house and payments, it'd be nice to know that.
Yeah,
when
but
you
property
first started the process.
property records are public. I mean, my husband and I absolutely looked at what the property taxes were of homes that we were looking at.
And
I
the
mean,
Met District.
Well, the Metro District,
I don't think.
that,
no Metro
the tax part is when you look at your taxes. I mean,
The part of the question we're trying to address is you see it a lot in our community, this general, we'll call it a learning curve on metro
people don't know.
districts. And we just want to give folks a chance to see, but also we didn't want to like highlight it as this terrible bad thing. You live in a metro district, beware. So we're just trying to find that balance between trying to lower the bar of how much surprise people are getting. And
Yeah, I was just curious on that one piece because I mean, there's obviously a lot of paperwork when you're
Right.
closing on a home, but I wanted to make sure that whatever was put in there was something that was actually able to happen.
yeah,
I have one question about this disclosure. So this is a disclosure at the time the house is built. So the first time around, this disclosure would be signed by the original homeowner. Now it's part of the title search, so it's going to pop up as a title record. But when you're reselling your home, there's no disclosure requirement for the current seller to the homeowner for the next buyer? Or are you saying there needs to be a disclosure at resale?
I believe it was our intent to do it at resale. Is that, am I mistaken there?
Well, that's what I was asking, yeah.
That's one of the logistical issues that jurisdictions have grappled with across the Front Range. It will show up in title again. It will show up as an exception to the title policy.
Mm-hmm.
It will also show up when you get your estimate of taxes for the next year. It shows up as a line item, just like the town's mill levy shows up as a line item on the tax statement every year.
Right.
But to try to enforce a requirement that the second and third and fourth buyer in the chain of title are disclosing and somehow ensuring that notice, other than as just a document that gets produced during the title search, makes it to that fifth buyer or that sixth buyer. There's just, nobody's come up with a feasible way to ensure that. And to pass that burden on to these subsequent owners in the chain of title, nobody's figured out a cost-effective way to require and administer that requirement.
And just speaking as a realtor, as a broker, when part of the contract already is the tax certificate that's getting supplied to them, which is a requirement per the contract. And if I just pulled out the taxes here. I mean, it clearly states what the amount is and that it's going to the Metro District.
Yep.
But I think most people seem to get surprised at the get-go. They go into the model home. The model home says, yeah, taxes are going to be about 1.1%. They're like, oh, okay, off it goes, and they don't think about it again till they're at closing, and then they get their first bill, and then they're like, what the heck is this Metro District charging me $1,600 for in my taxes? Because they don't realize that's part of that 1.1%. So I agree with you that I think it's great to have it up front with the initial. It's also going to come up in the title work, and it's clear here for a resale. So I would support for sure this initial disclosure, but not subsequent ones on resale.
That's kind of what I was asking, was like, if I go to sell my house, how does that chain keep going? Because I feel like if this agreement is for the Metro District, it's not for the people selling homes in the Metro District. So I agree that it should be that initial. And then if, like you said, if you're required to submit something else afterwards, that should cover that. But I just had a hard time figuring out how the Metro District would have control over what,
Right. That disclosure on resale.
Yeah.
So in just one other comment that I think I want to make sure that this is put out there on the table for the council to consider, is that the committee grappled a lot with this. And one of the suggestions was that the town, and it probably doesn't belong in the model service plan, but the town staff should continue to make efforts to engage real estate firms in the area and provide some opportunities to work with them, and maybe help provide a one sheet that they can provide to their customers that are shopping in Timnath, to just give them an idea of generally what resources they can look to in Timnath to get a better sense for what living in a Metro District is going to look like for them. So that part's, again, one of those, the strategy will probably evolve over time as communication mediums evolve, but that was one of the topics that got a lot of discussion during the committee.
And I agree with that. I think that there's a lot of misinformed people out there, realtors being part of that misinformation that they're passing on to their clients. So I think a robust, any kind of education we can give to other real estate firms would be so welcomed out there in the industry.
Well, and with the learning curve you were talking about, a lot of these people buying houses as we go forward, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to look at the houses and that, but they're also going to go online and look at the Timnath website. Right. And maybe that's where your committee can help educate people there and say, just be aware, Metro District, and here's the definition, and here's the map of our town, and it shows every development in shaded red has a Metro District. Yeah. So be aware of that, because I know my son and those younger families, they all look at that now. So maybe that's one way we could say we try to get the information out there.
So we do have a few presentations that have been put up there that were recorded. In addition to, we've got a FAQ document that we put together, and we put together a communications plan with Ashley from Slate. So yeah, we are definitely going down that route of just having a central resource so people can have the tools to know how to have a productive interaction with their Metro District.
So let's see if I can get this. So is there any other questions or discussion? So
hey, Mark,
bullet
one
points,
other,
if you go to.
Just one other, and I'm just jumping in because it's something that I have dealt with a lot, and that's the sunset of the district. And I totally understand that as it relates to the debt service component of it. But most of these districts have significant O&M and maintenance responsibilities that are going to be perpetual. in some manner or form. And if the district is sunsetted, somebody's going to have to figure out how to perpetuate that maintenance component. And I just wanted to throw that out.
Sure.
Okay,
And
thanks.
I'll say at this point, the committee didn't take any position on sunsetting the Metro District itself. That would be, I think, left to the decisions of the boards at that time. So, but there was as you alluded to, there was a strong feeling that we should keep any protection on the debt sunset. So, yeah. I mean, they basically become an HOA once they don't have any debt. So I said they basically become an HOA once the debt's retired. So just with the power to levy some property tax too.
So Brett, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets, and council. There's 5 bullets here of recommendations that the committee had. I'm leaving out the last one on purpose here.
Yep.
So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recommendations of mainly reporting and updating records and stuff like that, to request the staff to update and come back to the council. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And so the question to the council, and I don't think this will just be a head nod, is do you agree that we should direct staff to come back to us and include those in the various documents?
So is that the 4, well, one of them sort of two-pronged, I guess, in there, the 3 has two sort of A and B. So, but we're not discussing the regional mill levy?
No, that's, if you notice, I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the regional was 6.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Even though it's number 5 on here.
Here's the bullets I'm looking at.
Basically, it's do we agree with everything? Can we agree first on everything but the regional improvement, and then we
Yeah,
can discuss
yeah,
that?
I'm
Is
gonna
the
talk
question.
about it in a sec. So, does everybody agree with that? Deal. Okay, so staff and Robert, if you can come back and bring us something, let's say first week in January or something like that. Does that give you enough time?
Sure.
Okay.
Mayor, may I ask
Yeah.
one more question? So when that comes back, will it come back to us in the actual service agreement?
Right.
And if so, could we have it where it does, like you do track changes or something, just so we can kind of see what those changes are?
It'll come back to you as 2 attachments in the packet, a clean version and a red line version.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Question, do we have any?
All right, then. the
Sorry,
regional-
Mayor Pro Tem, there's one that they talk about doing this every 6 months. They've been telling us they're about to submit for 4 years now. And I've communicated to them that if we see a submission from them, that they are going to be held to whatever the new model service plan is that the council acts on later this year.
February 1st, a new policy.
Rick, your mic.
It would sort of get us back in to make sure that we're grandfathered in with the intent. I don't know. You said you've talked to them. If that's
Yeah, I don't think that we need to, I mean, the actions that I've seen councils take before in contexts like this are that they'll put some kind of temporary moratorium on considering new applications until they have a policy in place or an amended and restated policy in place. I don't think we need that here. I think it's a minor enough amendment where we've put them on notice that whatever the council lands on in its December or January meeting is going to be the standard that we hold them to.
Okay, then on the regional improvement mill levy, and I know that's too early here to make any decisions on, but how would you like to proceed with that? Or what's your committee suggesting on how to proceed with that?
Well, I mean, I would propose that we take a look at getting rid of the regional improvement mill levy. I think it makes an unequal tax burden around the town. You're looking at some neighborhoods paying larger property taxes to the town than others. I think with this council ought to discuss removing that change. And I'll just put that out there.
So do we want to talk about that today, or do we want more information on it? Or
I
what?
think I'd prefer to have just a specific line, presentation item on it. We can talk about
Okay.
what other places are doing. We can talk about, why we implemented it in the first place.
I think everybody's nodding. I don't think we have enough info, Brett.
That's
So
fine.
could you either get your committee or staff or do something to
Yeah.
bring us some more info on that?
Yeah, I'll work with town staff on, we had a number of committee meetings just being educated on a number of these topics. So
Yeah.
I think we can leverage some things from that, Robert, and help the council have a more informed
Perfect.
view on that. So yeah, that'd be fine.
I'm not informed. So nope, that sounds great. Brett, awesome job. I mean, this was, I couldn't be more pleased with what you've done and how you did it. And I had a couple developers chew my butt, as I told you before, that we were even doing this. And one of them called me back and said, I apologize, Mark, this thing, Brett did a great job and the committee did a great job. So good job.
Thank you. I will just add as well that in our last meeting, the committee felt that with this recommendation and with us setting a communications plan in place, this was an ad hoc committee, and they they felt that their role had been essentially fulfilled. So this will be more directions from the council and myself working with staff on some of just following through some of the plans that we came up with at this point. So
Okay.
just for the council's information.
Also, I'd suggest that we prep up a thank you letter to all the people that are on this committee, thanking them for their service and stuff. And I'm happy to sign that if you'd like the mayor to sign it and you. So if you'd like that, I'm more than happy to do it.
Yeah, I'll work with staff of West. You can help me with that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great job, Brett. Great job. That was a big bite, and you guys did a good job. Robert, thanks for training them so well and stuff. You did a great job on that. Last thing, I don't know, is Melissa going to talk about this? I think you are,
I'll
Wes.
do it.
aren't
Yeah,
you?
so Melissa was gracious enough to put it in the packet, but so as you know, coming up in November and December, you traditionally only have one meeting in November, and then you pass on the one that's typically the week of Thanksgiving, and the same holds true in December. You have a number of pending development applications and potentially other work ahead of you. So staff.
Why don't you go through those? I mean,
Sure.
I mean, just, I agree with it, but when I heard it, somebody told me, it was a big list.
It does become a big list, and the primary reason that it becomes a big list is because of the removal of the Thanksgiving and then the week of Christmas meeting. So that's where it does become a little bit tricky, and that's where, losing 2 meetings, it becomes the big list. And
what I'm asking is, could you just, Saratoga,
so
Timnath,
what's
whatever.
slated for that is Saratoga Falls preliminary plat. To come back. They've worked pretty diligently after the sketch plan approval, and we think we've got them to a point that you guys had made for that. The Timnath Trail Apartments Phase 2 would be coming forward for that. The senior housing, that would be coming forward with that. And then the other one, which is out there, most likely would also be the Fisher first filing. That's been one that's been kind of out there for quite a while. And we finally have gotten that one to the finish line for the most part on that. So those are kind of the 4 major ones that are out there. And right now.
But we've got other issues then too. So we've got the budget that needs to be approved. Wes, help add.
That's correct. So you do have your year-end budget process. So on the 10th, you have a presentation. On the 8th, you have a budget hearing that's set, and you'll potentially have some other contractual matters that come up between now and then.
I just want the council to have a flavor of what's there out there and stuff, and why the staff's requesting this meeting.
And in particular, some of these items, don't forget, have public hearings attached to those. So, I mean, it's not as if staff will do a 10-minute presentation, there's a 5-minute discussion, and you kind of move on. Some of these will be rather lengthy in their process and discussion and debate and public input. So just note that that's a part of that. So
We did get one bit of relief from that list that you probably saw there, Mark. The Timnath Ranch sketch plan, they did get that back to us. So we intend that to come back on the 10th as Rick had directed them at their last meeting. We weren't too sure if they were still working through that to come back at a later date, but we did get that late last week. So we feel that they're ready to come forward back with your recommendations on the 10th. So that one did get peeled off the list to make it back onto the 10th of November.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
so your option is we could queue it up for the 8th, but it would be a long, very combined meeting. So, or potentially push these.
And I
to
think we
January.
got a couple other things that have to go on. So so they got the proposed dates. I'm going to make a suggestion that November 24th won't work based on the stuff that we talked about earlier today. So December 1st or 15th. And I think when we were talking, we all thought December 1st was a better, but I want to make sure everyone's good with that before we say that.
We are intending to have a planning commission. We still have other development items that are out there that can still also make the December 1st. They wouldn't come back to council until the next year, obviously. But yes, we are intending to have a planning commission meeting in December.
Is there any magic on why we have to have them on Tuesdays? Wes?
No.
Robert?
No.
So how about throwing out another idea, November 30th, which is Monday, or December 2nd, which is a Wednesday?
It's your pleasure.
I think either one of those would work for me. I would prefer to do it earlier in December than getting closer to the holidays.
Me too.
Because I know we're traveling and I have no idea when.
Well, and if it works for you guys as council, I mean, I can look at our development schedule and see if we could move our December 1st items to December 15th. Or December. Yeah, maybe we could make it our planning commission make up for later in December. We can look at that as well if you guys really truly want to target December 1st.
Tuesdays don't mean that much to me, but it might mean something to you guys. Brett? You're the one
I'm okay
working,
not doing
and
on a
you,
Tuesday.
Aaron?
I'm good on either the 30th or the 2nd.
So I think we'll let you keep the Tuesday and we'll go the Monday or Wednesday. Which one do you guys prefer? I don't care. Rick doesn't care. Lisa?
I don't care.
She don't care. Aaron?
I don't care.
Brett?
Okay. What would be better for staff?
Yeah.
We can do the 30th if we just want to.
Do you have a preference, staff? They're Monday over a Wednesday?
For me, I don't know. If Matt
You
does.
know what? Is Thanksgiving the Thursday before that Monday?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
So let's do
it would be a
Wednesday.
very interesting packet week.
Yeah.
For that.
Let's do Wednesday.
That'll help us get the packets out. So
Yeah. So let's do, and they can be later, Wes, on that too. You know, you could shoot them out Monday then and not worry about it, or Melissa. So agreed, December 2nd, have a meeting, 6 o'clock at this chamber.
Yep, and then we will split off. Do you want all that could be eligible to go on that meeting, or do you
I'm
want
gonna
to
let you
split half and
guys
half?
organize it up. We're just opening up
we'll try
another
to,
meeting.
at a staff level, we'll organize it so we can try to divide and conquer here a little
Yeah.
bit. So we're not lumping.
I think
everything
the
in one
idea
place.
is
Yeah.
just
Okay.
giving you guys
Just wanted to make sure
a
that
second meeting.
you were either wanting all on the separate meeting or you wanted to split half and half.
Split it up.
Okay.
Thank you for your direction.
Can I just ask a question about that? Is there a requirement as far as how soon before a meeting we have to get information out to the public? Or does that timeline work?
As far as the packet material,
Like agendas, do they have to be public at a certain time frame before the meeting?
Like the announcement for the exec committee is what?
So there's a 24-hour posting requirement for agendas.
Okay.
there are a little bit different rules for executive.
So that'll give you
So that'll give time.
Tuesday.
That's what I was
yeah,
wondering.
Yeah, good question, Elisa.
Well, in
That's why I
respect-
thought Wednesday rather than Monday.
Well, in respect to the Wednesday one, we will probably still aim for that Friday because some of these have some meaty development applications and I don't want to necessarily leave you hanging with 24 hours to read it. So
But
we'll,
you know what, truthfully, that'll be a Friday right after Thanksgiving.
okay, all right.
You know, I'd hate to see you guys work
Okay.
overtime to get it. I mean, do you guys okay? I
Is
think
everybody
we're all,
comfortable with that?
we're
Okay.
all saying Monday's fine.
Thank you.
You know, we'll take, I better not say that. Okay, so.
Mark, can I just say one more comment, I guess, about the calendar part?
Yeah.
It just made me think that, I know I've mentioned this before, I feel like as a council, it would be really helpful to have some kind of a rolling calendar that's public, so that all of these upcoming things are somewhere that we can go to see, so that we can adjust as needed when something big is coming up. So
Yeah, and
just gonna throw that out there again.
I know there's a rolling calendar the staff has, we just don't see it.
It's a varying everyday rolling calendar.
They
Like the
usually
biggest-
are. They usually are. Even the
Yeah.
public ones that all the cities put out, it says right on there, all things are subject to change and,
Yep.
and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So-
the struggle for us with the development would be case in point, the Timnath Ranch sketch plan. We were honestly internally anticipating that to not make the November 10th meeting based on my conversations with the developer. And then kind of at the very last minute, it was something that they finished off and got back to us. So I don't want to, set unrealistic expectations for you on when you think you would see something and then have something like that change
I would
to be
okay
moved
with
up.
that.
But
I
we
think,
can look at
Kevin,
that.
we're all,
Okay.
we would, I think we
We
all
anticipate
understand a rolling
changes.
calendar and that a rolling calendar means just that, a rolling calendar, and something that's there on January 10th might show up in March 10th and everything else.
Yeah, I just don't want it to go the other way, like having us put out there that the Timnath Ranch sketch plan would be, in December, but then it shows up in November. I just don't want to give you a surprise like that to where it jumps up a month or something like that.
I don't think any of us,
Okay.
it's going to be more info than what we've got right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa. Good comment.
It's been discussed in staff and I'm working on something to get out. How would you feel about that being in your packet?
The rolling agenda. What would be ideal, and I don't know if you guys keep it on an Excel spreadsheet or what, but I mean, the ideal is that, and we could just go look at it anytime we want.
Okay, like on the
I mean,
website?
I can't imagine that
So-
having something on an Excel spreadsheet that it seemed like, I mean, what do you keep it on?
So honestly, a lot of it sits on my whiteboard.
Really?
But
Okay.
I'm going to throw out one option that I think Wes would be comfortable with is I have a development under review page on the website to where it gives information about each application. I could modify that to include something that talks about potential, or do you want it out in the public, or do you want it just primarily for you internally?
I personally prefer public just because I think we have so many times where community members are like, I didn't know this was coming. I didn't know this was coming. And I'm thinking beyond just development. I'm thinking putting our budget stuff on there, if we ever have proclamations, which I know we don't do those often, but we've had those before, putting those on there for the month. So I'm thinking beyond development.
So what I'd like to do is, and I've worked with Melissa some, we've had some conversations about this. I'll put it on steroids. She actually has been gracious enough to do some back end work. I just need to work with her to sit down to develop something more comprehensive, and then we'll manage it at a macro level. So hopefully we'll have that, if not by November, certainly by December.
But that's my preference. I don't know what everyone
And
else's is.
I like what you're saying. And to me, I mean, we used to have it at the office, you guys have to have it at TST. You just have this rolling Excel spreadsheet and you check it off, or you move it back down, or you move columns. I mean, it's just not, and it doesn't need to be that big. A name, a very brief description, and a date.
Yep. Okay,
All
we'll
right.
work on it.
In that at least.
Yeah, I don't need detail.
Yeah.
Very, very basic.
Okay.
Thanks.
We've struggled with the detail, so.
Yeah, I know Loveland does one, Fort Collins does one, and theirs are usually on their website. And I mean, it's barely even the title, it's very, very draft.
Okay,
Good comment, Lisa.
we'll work on it. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think we have anything else. Looking around, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.